President Cyril Ramaphosa's latest cabinet reshuffle washing down with South Africans. We've seen key changes, including at health, where we've got a new minister in Joe Pahla. You look at Treasury, the announcement of Enoch Godongwana to replace Tito Mboweni. There was much thanks from the president when he mentioned the resignation of the now former health minister, Zweli Mkhize, currently embroiled in that digital vibes scandal. Let's take this up with Professor Sethulego Matebesi, who's joining us live this hour. Prof, afternoon to you. Grateful for your time. A lot of people were saying on Zweli Mkhize that listening to the president yesterday talk about his resignation, you would have sworn that this is a man who was simply leaving because he'd chosen to retire rather than facing massive scandal.
Yeah, well, once again, very disappointing. I also want to join the chorus that says not necessarily about the president, but about our former Minister of Health, which strongly put the president under tremendous pressure. Only on the eve of the cabinet reshuffle decided to resign. But this is what has become of the African National Congress and our public leaders. They know perhaps they can get away with this country, because I don't think in any other political context, in any societal context, our leaders would have acted like, people like Dr. Mkhize. It's unacceptable where there's some serious allegations and a credible report from your investigative unit, yet the president decided not to take action.
And even on the Zweli Mkhize issue, the president had faced pressure for about a month to speak on what the SIU report had found against him. We eventually learned about that because the SIU had now filed papers and made recommendations to the NPA for a possible criminal investigation into the minister and his son Dedani. Why has Ramaphosa still not spoken on that at length? Because the absence of Zweli Mkhize from cabinet does not absolve him from his duty as head of state to address that matter in full, does it? Okay, I think Professor Matebesi's picture is frozen, as happens with these virtual conversations. We'll hopefully be able to link up to him here on Newsweek PM and see how far we can get with that discussion about the president, the SIU report, and Zweli Mkhize, who's now former health minister, after weeks, if not months, of calls for him to indeed resign. He did that last night at the 11th hour as the country was waiting to hear from President Cyril Ramaphosa on the cabinet reshuffle. Dr. Matebesi, I'm told we have you back. I was asking you about the fact that President Ramaphosa has not really spoken at length about the contents of the SIU report on digital vibes and what it says about former Minister Mkhize. We know the former minister will now challenge that report, but surely the president still has to say something.
Yeah, well, we've got a constitutional democracy. It's not up to the president to decide whether he's going to release or take the South African citizens into confidence. He had to do that, and he should have done that immediately after having received the report. A normal response from our presidents in the past was that they need time to study the report, and I don't know what the president still wants to study in this report, but once again it is indicative of politicking, where a decisive decision has to be taken, but a leader is only looking at his political interest, and that, once again, it's unacceptable. I don't know how long the president still needs how long he would need time to spend on, familiarizing himself with such an important report.
He thanked Zweli Mkhize for what he described as his outstanding leadership. Minister Mkhize himself, in his resignation letter, said he did so because of the stability that's required in that office, given that the health department is the first port of call in a pandemic. But if the former minister was indeed interested in seeing that there is stability at health, should he not have resigned at first instance when we caught wind of the digital vibes allegations, whether he believes he's guilty or not?
No, the whole issue of reputational damage also comes into play here. You've got a minister some serious allegations. But yet again, I think what the former minister, tried to do was perhaps to try and buy time and see how this is going to pan out. Once again, very unacceptable. And Dr. Mkhize, for me, represents within the African National Congress what I would call the so-called voices of reason, and at least people that some of us thought there's at least some credibility. Now, I know he has not been found guilty in a court of law, but these are serious allegations against him, and as I've indicated, it's not some opposition party which have compiled the report. It's not a political commentator which have compiled the report. It's a credible institution, and action should have been taken. And I think that action should actually, at least by reflection, should have come from the minister, where he said, even if I've not been found guilty, but these allegations are tainting the image of the office that I'm holding. And this comes at a time where we're not talking about a ministry which is dealing with our finances. We're talking about a ministry which, if it acts wrongly, can lead to people, South Africans, losing their lives. And it comes at a time where people need to be supported. I mean, a lot of money is needed in terms of the vaccination campaign. But, I mean, if our leaders could have taken money during the burial of our former icon, it is also shocking that in this time and age, we are still talking about ministers who still believe that they can get away with some of the things that happened with the digital rights tender.
Are there any ministers who've remained in cabinet who you believe should have got the chop last night?
Well, the Minister of Police should have been replaced. And by default, and I think this has been ventilated now, where you now get somebody who will come and act as an advisor. That once again is also indicative that there are serious problems within the police ministry. But remember, Cyril Ramaphosa has made his billions, and I don't understand, does the president deal with all these issues, and some people refer to this as political posturing, planning to have, or that he has an aspiration for a second term within the African National Congress. But be that, I think the president had a glorious opportunity to act against the ministers that I think to a large extent has actually eroded the trust within the leading party and the government. But I think he also had to play the political game, because we are not far from an elective conference within the ruling party. And I think the president will need all the support. And we know that the Minister Cele is one of the strongest allies of the current president.
Nosiviwe Mapisa-Nqakula is out as Defense Minister, replaced by National Assembly Speaker Thandi Modise. The president last night said that Mapisa-Nqakula would be redeployed in a yet-to-be-announced capacity. Now, given that the chair of National Assembly Speaker is now vacant, would sending Mapisa-Nqakula there make sense strategically for the ANC?
Yeah, well, I think there the president was quite decisive in terms of changing the defense minister. But yet once again, the question is, and I've got absolutely great respect for Thandi Modise. She has been around, an experienced cadre of the African National Congress. But the question is, will she be capable to lead the defense? But I think that was also a very strategic move by the president, not to say that he is leaving Mapisa-Nqakula in the lurch or in the dark. But once again, this is also indicative that the president perhaps was not satisfied with the performance, and that leads to the previous question: why was action not taken on the Minister of Police?
Professor Matebesi, more broadly, there's been a lot of conversation about how, and you mentioned this as well, the Bekicele situation where he stayed Now, as Minister of Police, because of ANC internal dynamics, there is a conference in 2022, which is now less than 6 months away, the year itself at least, because we don't know when exactly conference will be. Do you think in the reshuffle yesterday, Ramaphosa managed to strike the right balance to keep the ANC together, or will those factional divisions be exposed even wider?
No, well, what happens, because the factions are already there, and we know that most of the so-called RET forces are fighting for their political life, and I can't see that this battle will now suddenly be, go to bed. Definitely not. Actually, what I foresee and predict is that the so-called RET forces, or those who are not satisfied with the leadership of President Cyril Ramaphosa, will definitely, behind the scene, a lot of, discussions are going, as to how to unseat the president. Yes, the cabinet, to a large extent, if you look at finance, for me, that was unexpected. I don't think any analyst could have predicted that Tito Mboweni will resign, and that for me was a huge surprise. But you've got also very formidable and experienced public figures like Ujo Pata taking over there. But at the end of the day, the ANC is in crisis. The ANC has been battling to do to get the basic rights, where a leader, irrespective of who is that leader, when that leader have done something wrong, action should be taken. The ANC has an integrity committee, which I think just plays a ceremonial role there within the African National Congress. And all these challenges that the ANC, this glorious organization, has, will not go away with a cabinet reshuffle. We have seen this in the past, where the former president will change cabinets at whim, and that does not necessarily mean that we will now suddenly see a so-called revolution on service delivery, or a revolution on ensuring that there is discipline within the African National Congress, and that public servants are doing what they are supposed to do, and ministers are doing what they're supposed to do.
Professor Sethulego Matebesi speaking to us from Bloemfontein in the Free State. Good to have your time, sir. Thank you.